Hi everyone, it's Yasmine,
Hey, it's Emily.
and this is Doctors Who Wear Pink.
We're super excited for you to be here today, whether today's your first time listening in with us or your second time because you liked us yapping about ourselves so much. We're super excited to have you here today.
Yes, and today we have such an amazing guest. Her name is Marquia Walker, and she is our class president. Such an incredible person, and honestly, the first person come to our minds when it comes to having our first guest. So stay tuned for that and take a listen to everything that she has to say. So today we have a really incredible guest. She is our fearless female leader, aka our class president. Marquia Walker. Round of applause, round of applause. We just want to start off by just, I guess, having you tell a little bit about yourself to the audience.
Yeah. Hey, first off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's super kind. And I'm excited to be here. But yeah, my name's Marquia Walker. I'm now a second year medical student, which is crazy to say because I feel like we just started.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm the president and academic chair for our class. I'm from Bradenton, Florida, which is like about 2.5 hours south of Gainesville, straight down I-75. And I went to Howard University for my undergrad education, came back home during COVID, went to USF, and did a master's program there before I applied to medical school, and now I'm here at the University of Florida. So yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll jump into our first question. We just wanted to know a little bit about what kind of motivated you to pursue medicine and kind of be on this journey with all of us.
Yeah, it's kind of a long-winded answer just because it took a minute. So, I mean, originally I wanted to go into veterinary medicine. I'll start like going into college, that was my goal. And then I didn't do too hot in like my second and third year of college, and I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to be doing this. Because for context, I was an engineering major. And I was like, maybe I don't need to do this. Like, I really don't like this. I'm failing these classes. I'm not enjoying myself at all. And I remember though, my freshman year, I did take a couple biology major classes and I really enjoyed them. And so I was like, okay, once I talked to like my mom and some of my mentors, they were kind of like, you seem that you just really like more life sciences things and maybe what you're saying you want to do, which at the time was like vet med, but I was thinking also maybe like prosthetics or something like that, like specifically like for animals and things like going that route.
Mhm.
Um, they're like, maybe, you should kind of stick with something a little bit more like with people. You're a people person, like you like talking to people. I was like, okay. So I was like, I guess maybe I'll just go to med school at this point. And then it was funny because so I changed majors back to biology my end of my sophomore year at Howard, I want to say. Like I did a full, yeah. And then um at that point, I basically had found out about like all of my grandma's health issues, which I will say like like because we were her grandkids, I didn't know a lot about that. It was kind of like our parents were like, your grandma's sick, but they didn't want to like give us like the full scope of what was happening. And at that point, I
Yeah.
was kind of learning about it more. And then also I would say a lot of information at this point was coming out about like health disparities in medicine, or at least I was becoming more aware of it. It was probably already out at that point, truthfully. And so
Mhm.
a lot of things were coming out about like cardiovascular disease and like the Black community and like disproportionately affecting them and like those deaths and things. And then, talk about like mental health in the Black community. Like all these things are coming out. And I was like, okay, so I really like science. I like helping people. I was like, maybe I should pursue medicine. And that's basically kind of how that came about. It was just like a lot of conversations, a lot of information. And honestly, I'm really happy with my decision. I think at that point, I just kind of started putting myself in more spaces to being around like more doctors, seeing like, okay, what is this really about? And I was happy with that decision. I wasn't upset. I was like, this is actually pretty cool. I really like what they're doing. one of my mentors, she's very heavily involved in the community, and I really enjoyed that because I was like, you can be in this leadership position and yet at the same time still be able to make these impacts on specific communities that you really care about,
Yeah.
and make your voice heard, especially with your expertise. And so I feel like overall medicine was a really good way for me to accomplish that. Not
Mhm.
only like expand myself academically, like, because love learning, love science, like any other person, um, but also just really make the impact on the community and hopefully see the changes with the people that I cared about, and helping them in the healthcare field. So, yeah, that's kind of that.
Wow, what a real answer, because I can kind of relate with like the engineering aspect.
Mhm.
Did you stick with that? Like, did you graduate in it or did you switch? Okay.
So I switched. I did a year of engineering and I said, it's not for me, babe. And I back to biology. So,
Gotta
no,
go.
by the time I graduated, I graduated with my bachelor's in biology and chemistry. I just ended up double majoring because I had so many credits from the chemical engineering side. I was like, I may
Mm.
as well be a chemist at this point. So I just got those two. But yeah, did not stick with the engineering.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing kind of your journey to medicine. That's definitely a unique one. Wanting to go, go to veterinary medicine and then really having like strong indications for why you want to go to medicine and kind of I guess like a path for what you want to do. I think that's really special because we don't all really know what we want to do in medicine, but it sounds like you're very active about health disparities and kind of combating that, excuse me. Are there any things that I guess like right away starting at med school that you kind of like sought after to get the ball rolling with those interests?
Yeah, I think EAC was the biggest one just because I knew with the patient population we were serving, I was like, these are basically the people that I've been working with the entire time when I was in Sarasota working with the mentor that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like because of that population, I was like, oh, well, this is kind of the best way to do that a bit. And then also with this discovery pathways, I joined the medical student leadership and community health at EAC, with Dr. Guerra. And so that one allowed us to actually, we went to Pleasant Street, which is
Hmm.
over in the east side of Gainesville. And they run the mobile food pharmacy as well that you see at EAC sometimes. And
Yeah.
so volunteering there was also very like, eye-opening. It was very, I felt really good about being there because that was again like basically what I came to medical school for. And I thought that was really cool because again, the population that they're serving and then also just seeing the work that they do, like that one building having healthy food classes for helping people with like smoking cessation and also about like being heart healthy, but then also
Hmm.
having people there with like basically like social work, like with resources trying to help them with like getting jobs and all these things. They have like a computer room in the back for like kids to study and like do things like and people to apply for jobs and apply for, like government aid and things like that. And so it was actually really cool. Um, I think between those two, those are the main things that I've done that have kind of like filled my cup from that aspect of working with those patient populations that tend to experience more disparities in healthcare. Um, and then trying to think, I really don't, I think those are the two main ones. I still do work a little bit with the nonprofit that I was in back in Sarasota, which is called Multicultural Health Institute. I still do a little bit of work back there with them. Um, But mainly, I would say those two here in medical school are the things that like I kind of sought out and I was like, yeah, I like these a lot. Let's do this. And I just kind
Yeah.
of
One thing I will say, like, I feel really lucky to be at a school that like has so many resources like that for the community. Definitely, I feel like for most people in our class, like that was, at least for me, I won't actually speak for everyone, but a big draw. Like I feel like people are very passionate about that. And that's so awesome that you got to, I haven't even been to Pleasant Street. I know we've had like a health fair like set up
yeah.
there, but I haven't been able to go.
Mhm.
So that's really cool. I didn't realize that they had like all of those resources.
Yeah.
Is that something that you kind of see yourself, I guess, getting into in the future with your, career?
Yeah, I think in like a perfect world, some way, somehow, I would love to like do that as well.
Hmm.
Um, I think uh another way I was thinking of doing that too is like on a weekend. For example, I know some clinics, I think they do this like in the US period, but it might just be the ones that I go to at home. Where like on the weekend they kind of it's almost like an after hours clinic, if that makes sense.
Mm,
And so like on the weekends it'll kind of be open and people who either don't have insurance or just don't have like the best insurance, whatever the case is, can come in, be seen, kind of get taken care of. I think I'd love to do something like that on weekends. And then if that same weekend clinic is basically really similar to Pleasant Street. Like you have like a social worker or someone there who can
yeah.
help people. You have like, maybe a local food bank that comes in and is like giving out food to people who may need it and have like food insecurities and things. I think that would
Hmm.
be really cool. That's basically what my mentor does now, believe it or not. Like the nonprofit that I was working with, it's essentially what it is. Like people will come
Yeah.
in and really concerning health issues, like she'll see them. And I don't know, I think it's so impactful. I think it's a really cool way of, like I said, just kind of filling your cup. Like I think with medicine, whether you're like working in the hospital, you're an outpatient, like all these things, I think sometimes, like, I don't know, it's just like, maybe I should just do this for free or something, like on the side. I don't know, like go to EAC, do it, see these patients. And I think it's a good
Yeah.
way of kind of seeing making sure that you're seeing all the different levels of health care and what that looks like for all the different people that we have in our communities and really seeing what they're going through so that like you're just aware of like what's actually happening, what are people going through, how are you know the socioeconomic climate of like what we're doing right now, how is that affecting people, what does that look like and things. And so I just think it's a really good way of just staying grounded and staying aware, and I definitely would love to do that in the future. That's my goal personally. So yeah.
I love that. I love that so much and very beautifully put. Yeah, especially in this climate, like being, you know, boots on the ground, like seeing the policy changes in real time has been like so crazy, I guess, because being an undergrad, you don't really see it. You hear it and you're like, oh wow, like this sucks, but like it really sucks when it's like affecting, patients that you either have seen before or maybe are just seeing and like, people are very open and vulnerable in clinics
Yeah.
and like will share, a lot of their struggles, health related or not, and that like that is always so hard.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, like I grew up pretty much upper middle class. And so
Hmm.
I'm very grateful that like my mom and my dad, like my stepdad, all my parents, um, were really adamant about making sure that my sister and I were involved in community service or something that just
Hmm.
gets you to see what other people go through. Um, because I think sometimes you can end up in a bubble, whether it's intentional or not, right? And a lot of times I don't think it's intentional. It's just people, they're doing what they're used to, and the people that they're around, like this, that's their environment, that's their community. But my parents I think they did a really good job of just making sure that we were aware of like, hey, we're really, blessed and grateful to have these things, but kind of like don't forget to look at what other people are going through and really see what that looks like because that's also what matters. Like we have to help each other and we have to know what other people are going through. Otherwise, what's the point at that point? Like you're not going to be able to help anyone really at that point.
Yeah, no,
So,
exactly.
so yeah, I think they did a really good job of that. But to your point, I do agree. It's just a really good way of being able to see what's going around with you, like in real time, literally as it's happening.
Yeah.
I like that. Also, what really stands out to me hearing you talk about this now is kind of how like you're using medicine and being in med school as like kind of like a path to achieve these goals that you have for yourself by helping the community. Because I think like um coming into like med school, I've been very focused on like the research I'm doing and like kind of what specialties are out there. And I think that being especially at the school we're at has really opened my eyes to the opportunities that us as students have to help the community. And I think that's really cool that you've been very focused on that from like day one because that is exactly what matters. And I really, yeah, I think that's very special. You're a big leader in our community, which kind of I want to segue to our next major point is that you're a class president, which is so, so awesome. I know that the previous classes before, I'm not sure how many, have mostly been male dominated, or I mean, male president dominated. So, can you kind of tell us what inspired you or made you want to run for president, how that's been going so far, and kind of what that's looked like for you?
I will say it wasn't an original goal of mine, truthfully. It wasn't on the radar. But I think just like that first month-ish, I think, of school, kind of. Just like talking to people. I had a lot of like at that point friends just come up and they're like, "Hey, like you should run." And I was like, oh, "Okay." And I was like, I think people just, like when you're friends with people, they're like, "Oh, they're just saying that like just to be nice." But then it
Yeah.
just it kept coming up. And at that point, I was like, "Okay, well, do I think I could do this? Do I think I could do a good job in this role?"
Mhm.
And then also I kind of just felt I don't know, it was almost like well, if the people want you there and the people are speaking, you probably should do it. Like you
Mhm.
don't want people, like I didn't want, I don't have a good way of saying that, but like I didn't want it to kind of be like, oh, well, that's not who they wanted there. Like if I had
Yeah.
asked me at that point, I don't know if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so at that point I was just like, okay, like I'll run. Um, I will say I wasn't expecting to have to, excuse me, give a speech and all that. So I was like, oh, well, this is
Yeah.
this is serious.
Like a 5 minute speech too with a
Yeah,
PowerPoint slide. Like that's a lot.
it was. I was like, this is serious. Okay. But no, I just think at that point, I really do think it was once I gave the speech and it was like standing in front of our class and just like talking to everyone.
Mhm.
I was like, actually, I do think I could do this. I do think I'd like it. And I think I'd enjoy making the people who I already care so much about, even though it's literally only been at this point like a month into school, um,
Mhm.
but making their lives easier in any way that I can, helping them out kind of thing. Um, and I felt like at that point I was like, I'm a yapper. I'll yap to all the admin, all the time and just talk to them and like figure things out. I don't mind doing that. So yeah, I just think that's kind of that was really the main push for me running. And then I think
Mhm.
once I won, I was, and then actually it was before that. We had to have a meeting with all the other class presidents. It wasn't necessarily an interview, but it was kind of like to just ask questions of them.
Mhm.
Um, and once we had that, and I got a little bit more inside information on really what they did and what that looked like and how they were helping their classes, um, is that was kind of like it settled in a bit more of like, okay, no, I actually do think like I can do this and make some kind of change and like really be helpful for our class. Um, and so overall, I would say like those were kind of the biggest pushes to me running.
Mhm.
Now that I'm in the position, I will say, I didn't know that I was like the first, as far as I can tell, like with what everyone's been saying,
Yeah.
like first like female class president. And so that was a
It's
shocker.
huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
that was,
Literally so
Like,
huge.
just take a moment and think about the fact that you're the first female president. I know that women in medicine is like growing as a fact, but like
I
that's
yeah,
huge.
can't believe like obviously you're like probably the most person to be the first, and I'm obviously biased because like everything that you've done, like you've just been incredible. But like I do think it's crazy that it's like 2025 and I'm like, oh, like this is the first? Like that is wild to think about, like for the med school, especially because I mean, like we have some very like I mean, powerful women, like so many people that I talk to in like other years, and that's not to like disqualify any of the men that are like previous presidents at all, but like I'm like, oh wow, like that is crazy that that's never happened.
yeah, I agree. I was shocked when I heard it. I think like in my first meeting with Dr. Carroll, she brought it up and I was like, oh, this is serious. Like y'all
Oh, she was
actually
excited.
like this is actually a thing.
Yeah.
Um, So that was a shocker. I'll also say I felt a lot of pressure from that coming
Mm,
into it, and I was like, oh, okay. And I just think too with looking obviously comparisons to Thief of Joy, but at the time because I was new and I just got into position, I'm like looking at what the class presidents like above us had done, and I'm like, these guys have done so much. So I was like, oh my gosh, and like here I am coming in and have this like basically like this historic position, and I was like I have to do something like it was wild
literally
like
anything.
so I did feel the pressure from that a lot. I will say I think overall just like with who we've elected for our executive board, and even the class presidents and e-board like above us too. Um, they really helped kind of take the weight off. Like, and I say that
Mm,
because I think they're just so supportive. And so, how can I help you? Like, what do you need done? Like, can I make this easier for you? Um, and if I have a question, they're answering it like all the time. Because I always
mhm.
had questions, especially when was first elected, at least for the first until like November, I was texting asking about something. Uh, and so they were very, very helpful. And I think just having that support system made being in the position, like, or just made that pressure a little bit more bearable, I think.
Yeah,
Um, I do think I think we've accomplished some really cool things so far. I think something I've kind of struggled with a little bit is I feel like sometimes a lot of the work that's being done is almost like behind the scenes. And
yeah,
so it's always as, um, what do you call it? Just like as present, I guess, or as visible
yeah.
to everyone. And so I think sometimes I've struggled a little bit with like, oh my gosh, I think I'm doing nothing, or like I'm not doing anything more. And so I've kind of had to just wrestle with that, even though I know it's not true. It's just it kind of felt that way, or I'm like, oh, what do they think? And so just wrestling with that a little bit, but I do feel like overall, just like between the e-boards and then I think our classmates too, like
Yeah.
will ask me a question, I answer. They're like, "Oh, thanks so much. Like, you're doing great." Like, all those things are like, even last night, like, I went to EAC and Avi and Diane were like, "Oh my gosh, like, your email is great. Thanks so much." I'm like, "Oh, people do like the things that I do.
That
That makes
email was great. I was
um,
like, thank you, girl, because
yeah.
I have been like, we're on summer break. First of all, just to give context to the audience of what this email was, basically, Marquia, the first sentence of like, hey, I've been waiting to send an email because I didn't want to overwhelm you guys this summer with a bunch of stuff, but here's an email with everything you need to make sure you have done and the dates. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Because there were so many things in there where I was like, wait, like when does that do? Like what? Because it's just like we're not all together, like in we call our med school building HMed. Like we're not in HMed like all together, and you like hear people being like, "Oh yeah, this is due." You know, you just hear it through the grapevine. So that, like, I was like, "Yes, girl!" Like that was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Love that. It was but yeah, no, I just think like once like hearing those things, it makes you feel better. But then again, I just think something I've really learned being in the position too is just that, um, and I think it's with medicine a bit too. It's just that like you have to kind of get used to or be comfortable with like delayed gratification. Like you're
Mhm.
not going to see or even get like the thanks or like see the improvement, see the patients being healthier like right there in that visit that you see them, or in my case, like the immediate moment I send an email, right? Like that doesn't mean that I'm automatically gonna get like, oh, thanks for sending that.
Yeah,
So I think the position has taught me a lot about that, and thankfully so. I just think that's not something that I'm used to, like I'm used to like, hey mom, I got 100. Oh my gosh, congratulations. And like it's like right there.
yeah.
So and so I just think that that's really a big lesson I've learned with that. I also think um being in the position is it's not that I think I've learned a lot about advocacy
Mm-hmm.
um, with it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, just like basically how you have to choose your words very carefully. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a way of like making sure that people perceive the message that you're understanding in the way that you want them to perceive it. Um, and so I think again, being in the position that I am, again, being like the first one class president, like with all of these, um, I think learning all of these lessons in general has just, which I only gave two, there's plenty more, but
Yeah.
just those two being the big ones. Um, I think just learning those in general, I feel like over time, like especially looking at myself from like last fall to now, um,
Mhm.
be just a lot better for advocating for our class and making sure that like I'm getting straightforward answers from people, not being afraid of saying like, if you tell me, oh, in 2 weeks, I can say, can I get a date? Or like if you say like at the end of the month, can I say a week from now, 2 weeks from now,
Yeah.
just not being afraid to do that. And then also, like I said, just kind of figuring out how to use my words a bit better, not being afraid to take my time when I'm talking to people to make sure like, okay, how do I want to say this? How do I want people to take from this? And I
Yeah.
think especially um with me being in a unique position. I think of like intersectionality as well. Like, yes, I'm a woman, but like I'm also a Black woman and things like
Hmm.
that. I think you do, whether it's unconscious or not, have to be very aware of like, or you're almost hyper aware, I think, of just how you speak to people. And
Yeah.
so I think just all of this together has just kind of made me more aware of that. And like I think just like it's really good practice for that overall. And
Mhm.
thankfully, like our admin and faculty and everyone like that, they're so kind and like they are also some of my biggest mentors. Like they're not afraid to be like, oh, okay, I see what you're asking, like, or like trying to help me figure out like the best way to word things. Like they're amazing with that. Our e-board too, like I'll send an email, be like, does this sound decent? And like getting people like people's feedback on that. And so I just think overall, like the support system is amazing and they've really helped, like I said, just kind of help me ease into this role and do the best that I can. And really just
Mhm.
become not only a better leader, but I think a better person as well.
Definitely. Oh, so beautifully put. You definitely move with like, and I do want to say this just to hype you up just a little bit. Like you move with like honestly such grace. And like I feel like you're very like calm energy within our class, which I feel like as a president is so important because like there is such like high stress, certain things will happen. We're like, oh my God, like everyone's freaking out in the Slack and you're like, hey guys, like don't worry, like you and Jerome, like Jerome's our VP, like do such a good job of just like handling that while also being some of the most friendliest people and like so easy to talk to, which I think is such a obviously two very important qualities when in a leadership role, but not everyone has that. And like that's something that's hard to learn. And so I just like really like value like what you guys do and like how you guys just like constantly, I guess, in a way, put yourself out there with the class, especially, the delayed gratification. It's hard to know like how you're being perceived, but you guys are perceived very well in my eyes and what I hear. So
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, I just want to second that. I feel like most of my communication as, one of our 130 classmates, I guess, is, the second hurricane comes barreling through Florida and we don't have class because, there's rainstorms, whatever. And so they switch our whole schedule, putting classes on a Friday afternoon that we had off. Half of our class is freaking out. We're like, I had a wedding planned, I had this planned, I had that planned. I bet your phone is just blowing up of like, hey, what's going on with the schedule? And you, with your very low stress persona, are like, we're gonna figure this out. I'm sure it's gonna be okay. Here's reason X, Y, Z. And, we figured it out for everyone. And I think that that is a very valuable life skill, especially being like in a leadership role where there's like kind of 15 different spotlights on you from different directions is like, how can I manage people that all have different expectations of me, higher and lower above, I guess, if that makes sense. And to me, that kind of reminds me of like, okay, when you're going to be a physician and you're going to have patients and different attendings and residents who are all coming at you about different things, you're very well equipped with your tool belt to, figure out how to handle all those problems at the same time. So I can confidently say our class would not be where we are today without you. So very thankful for you.
Thanks so much. Y'all are so sweet. Thank you.
We had to hype you up for a second because, like not everyone says it enough. And I'm like, you're like, just even the way like you're talking about all of it, I'm like, oh, like Marquia is just awesome. Like, we really love everything that you do. I liked how you kind of mentioned, because even as a female, like in being different leadership roles, like I know myself and probably our listeners have also experienced like maybe having to think twice more about things and the way that we say things and the way that we react to things than maybe, our male counterparts, just, with the way like sometimes females are perceived, especially in a leadership role. In terms of just like being like a Black woman in medicine, what does that look like for you? And like what have been maybe some things you learned or some challenges that, you've had to overcome?
I'm very, very grateful to not have any bad experiences in medicine thus far,
Yeah.
um, relating to who I am. And
Hmm.
so I think I don't, yeah, I don't have like anything like that I can kind of pull on, like any example.
Hmm.
Um, just because I think specifically where we are right now in our medical education, it's not like I'm in the clinic every single day and like seeing all these different patients or something like that. And so, um, I would just say, thankfully, I don't have any negative experiences with that. I'm very grateful for that. Don't
Yes, very
want them.
grateful.
I do not want them. Um, but I can say I, or kind of what I mentioned earlier, is I just feel like I'm a bit more hyper aware
Yeah.
of how I'm wording things, how I'm talking to people, how good I think my care is that I'm giving.
Mhm.
Um, and I and also I think just I'm very aware of my words. Like I don't want to like I'm like I don't want to offend anyone. Like I hate like when people say things and I'm like, did they not think twice before they said that? And I think so I'm just
Yeah.
very aware of what comes out of my mouth when I'm talking to patients. Um
Hmm.
but I think knowing like I think there's what I think 12 or 13 like Black people in our class, like just
Hmm.
alone. And I think out of those, maybe half of us are women. And so I think like looking at that, and then also looking at the numbers nationwide of like how many Black physicians we have, in comparison to like how many Black people we have in this country. it, it's just I'm like, okay, thankfully I haven't had any negative experiences or anything like that. But I do
Hmm.
feel like I just have a little bit more pressure to do really well
Hmm.
and to make sure that I succeed and get to where I need to go so that I can not only be the best physician that I can be, but just be like the best advocate that I can be for my patients. And while that obviously applies to all my patients, I'm just a little bit more like uh pushed, I would say, or like given a little bit more like a little like lighting the fire under me a little bit. Um, because I'm like, no, like I really want to take care of patients who look like me. Like I really want to
Yeah.
help the people who look like my sister, my mom,
Hmm.
my dad, my grandma, those kinds of things. Like those are people that I care about, those are people that I relate to, and that's my community who I grew up with, right? Um,
Hmm.
and so I think it's really just more from like it's just more of a motivation thing. Right now, I will say in my medical education to just make sure that like I learn what I can. If we have a lecture that talks, which I will say UF does a pretty decent job of so far, that talks
Yeah.
about disparities and who they're affecting. I'm like, okay, what is this? Like, paying a little bit more attention to that and what that looks like so that I know, when I'm in clinic, like to look for that in those patient populations. And then I also think thankfully, it's just been very supportive at UF. And I
Hmm.
think that's like, I mean, it's why I chose the school in the first place. I felt supported and I still do. And so I think with that, um, it's just because I feel so supported,
Yeah.
it's not that I don't think about like where I like my intersectionality where I fall, but I think it feels I just don't have so much of like a negative context for it in my head of like, okay, I know this
Yeah.
is where I fall and like now I'm being treated different or I have to like um I don't know. Really, that's the main thing. Like, I just feel like I'm like, I don't. And I think that's the beautiful part of it. Like, so now for me, it's more of like, I don't really have that negative context for it, or I don't have any negative experiences with this. So it's all positive. Like, I just want to work harder. I want to learn more so that I can take care of the patient population that I said I want to take care of and make sure that when patients come in and they see a doctor who looks like them, like they know they're going to be taken care of and that they feel comfortable and that like I'm going to advocate for them and get done what needs to get done. And so I think so far that's just kind of what that looks like for me. I'm glad it's all positive. Um, I hope it stays that way. I'm like crossing my fingers, like,
Crossing fingers and toes.
yeah,
Like
hoping it stays that way. Um, and yeah, that's really just kind of what that looks like for me right now. Like I said, we're going into our second year, so that I don't have,
no, that's great.
yeah.
And just really, really well said.
Thank you for sharing that. I guess like as a have you had any experiences with any female physicians that kind of have stood out to you? Maybe as like being a black woman in medicine?
Mm. Yeah, my CLG leader is the GOAT. I don't know about y'all, but
I
no,
love that.
seriously.
And for reference, CLG is a small group that we have every week with one faculty member of UF medicine, I guess, and then like a small group of 6 or 7 students that we have throughout all 4 years. So we kind of talk about topics that we're covering in class, but then also study skills and just having a supportive environment for anything that we kind of need to discuss that week. But go on about your CLG leader being the GOAT. That.
No, she's amazing. She's a pediatrician here at UF. And I will say she, for context, she's not a black woman, but I think her just being a female physician, period, um, she gives a lot of really good perspective. And I think honestly, we can even take her gender out of the equation. As a physician, period, she's amazing. And she's very knowledgeable. She's always like she really wants us to be the best that we can be. And I
Mhm.
bring her up because I think even in our children, when we have some of those like difficult conversations that we're talking about maybe a little bit more sensitive topics,
Mhm.
um, she does a really good job of not only making sure that everyone is being heard, you know, we're all granted we're all respectful, so it's never an issue. But also when I speak on my experiences or like some of the fears that I may have, you know, for myself, like being a black woman in medicine. Um, she's not I think she not only does a good job of like acknowledging that and kind of and making me feel really comfortable and saying like, yeah, you know, like that's valid. But I think also she does a really good job of giving like her own personal experiences that she may have had where, you know, she's advocating for patients or um she's having to um maybe I'm not I want to word this correctly. It's not that she's providing better care because she provides good care across the board, but maybe having to work a little bit harder, I'll put it that
Yeah.
way, to make sure that, you know, she's answering the question or whatever, for those patients. And so I think listening to her and honestly just having her be a really good listener as well has made I think she's really at this point kind of become a role model for me of how I would want to be as a physician. Because again, not only is she like incredibly knowledgeable, but just the awareness I think that she has when she's talking to anyone. I mean, we're in a group with 6, 7 different people. We're all different personalities, right?
Yeah.
And yet she finds a way to make sure that every single one of us feels heard. Every single one of us has a turn to speak, and that like whatever concerns we're bringing up, she's helping with like solutions in ways that she can. But then also not being afraid to say, you know, obviously, you know, she's not a black woman, so she doesn't, you know, maybe 100% understand what that feels like, but maybe she can come from a different angle or, you know, provide resources or give someone else that I can talk to, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that's just part of being a good physician in general, right? Like we don't have all the answers, but can we get the resources to help people find the answer? Where can we go to go find it? And I think
Mhm.
she's been an amazing person for that. Um, and then on the other side of that also, um, we have Dr. Parker here.
Love
She,
her.
yes, love her. She's amazing. Um, I think she has made herself pretty visible. Like she's on like panels and things like that here. She's one of our coaches in like the Office of Student Success. And
Mhm.
so I think her being so visible and then being vulnerable about like not only her personal life, but her being a
Yeah.
physician, her experiences and things, and just having her be an extra person that's like on my side. Just and honestly, I would say she's been like that because she interviewed me. So she's been like this since like
That's so cute.
September of 2023, something like that. Like like way back. And so
I just love her.
and so I think just like her keeping that relationship there, it's always an open door. Um,
Hmm.
and then, like I said, just being very open and being vulnerable. I think in a world sometimes you're just afraid to speak or like you don't you're afraid to kind of speak on things, but like both
Yeah.
of them aren't and they're like, no, I will tell you how it is. And I think that's just what you need sometimes. Like you need people to be very honest with you, um whether it's them being nice or not. Like you literally might not like what you're hearing.
Yep.
You need them to be
Yep.
honest. And so I think for both of them, just being that kind of person for me, I really do appreciate the both of them. And they both have in their own ways, just like, kind of taking little bits and pieces of like, okay, I want to be like this. I want to be like this. I want to be like this.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the best way to be the best physician for our patients. And yeah, they're
Yeah.
they're they're just perfect examples of that.
And so good that they're so outspoken because I think that goes a very long way just to make yourself heard and I guess like be present, especially as a woman physician, but physician across the board being a superstar is also what we want. So that's really awesome and good for you to have those kind of mentors so early on too, because just imagine the relationship you'll have with them in a few years. So that'll be really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's honestly such a great perspective to share. And I hope, people that are listening who are like maybe pre-meds or medical students that are like, either, a little bit behind the journey we're currently on or, taking that journey with us as, we're going through all the different stages at the same time. Like, go and like find a mentor. Like, I like everything you said. I think we obviously go to a school that does a really good job of setting those kind of relationships up, which I'm so immensely grateful for. But I know not every school is like that. And like even this year alone, like I wouldn't be like half, the future physician or like medical student that I would be without the mentors that I've just gotten really close to this year. So if you feel like you don't have that relationship with a physician or you're seeking that, don't be afraid to maybe put yourself out there and, ask, those vulnerable questions and, really like look for those resources because it only gets harder from here, from what I've heard. So it has been so nice to be able to like have someone to debrief with. And I know our small group leaders, also our like known as our CLG leaders that we were referring to, like we do have dedicated time that they have to meet with us one on one and like talk about the semester. Like once a semester we do that, which is so nice. But like I always find myself just like yapping to her about just like all the things going on and like I'll text, my CLG leader random things and I'm like, wow, like it is so nice to have that relationship with someone who's been there and like who gets it. Um,
Yeah,
so I really recommend that to anyone that's listening.
100%. And I
Yeah.
also think to add to that too, just like also don't like break any connections that you have so far when you get into medical school. Like I
Hmm.
took 3 gap years before coming to med school, and one of my mentors from then, I still call her, like, or I'm still texting her, like,
Yeah.
pick up the phone, like, and um, I definitely think like obviously you want to have like a pretty close knit, like you don't want to have like 10 people. Like that's a lot of advice that you're receiving. But I think
Yeah,
like if you have really good ones, just be like once you get into medical school, don't break those. Like keep them, keep that one or two that you had. Because they I think they all offer their own like perspectives and their own they're all beneficial to you in different ways. Whatever that looks like. So
definitely. And it's nice when someone knows you like pre-med student because
Mhm.
like I not that I feel like I'm any different. It's just I guess the time that I'm able to give people is different versus like in my gap year, like I would be the one calling all the time and like checking in and like always thinking of like the little things because I had the time and brain capacity to do that versus now like not as much, but they like know that and so they like my same thing like the doctors I worked with they like I still talk to them. I love that. I know Emily, you're like working with the same people you're worked with in your gap year right now.
Yeah, exact. Yes. During my summer, I'm doing some more research work with them, and honestly, also just to maintain my relationships because I think for me, seeing someone face to face is very important. So that's another reason I chose to come back to New York for a little bit, which has been a very good experience so far. And yeah, I also think that mentors can, one idea I just had is mentors can also be good, not just medicine, but also life outside of medicine. And that's also something we're going to explore in other episodes on this podcast is kind of talking to physicians and what their life looks like outside of medicine. And so I think that that's also very telling because, like I said, we're students that are in medical school. We're not just medical students. So it's important to have everything. But
yeah, I
um,
like that.
Exactly. I know. She said that like in our first episode, and I was like, we need to make a t-shirt, like
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
I can't take credit though. Heard it from someone else, but I'm gonna keep preaching it because I think it is really true and it also like goes to show how you're class president and you're involved in so many things in the community. Like you're not spending every single second behind your desk, which I
Yeah.
think is very, very healthy because it is about so much more.
Going on to the next question. I feel like so with this podcast, like obviously, like get people's perspectives on just like women in medicine, which we've kind of already talked about. But like I know for me, like I just hear all the time of like, oh, like you're gonna be a doctor. Like, when are you getting married? Like, when are you gonna have kids? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's always that. And like, I will say, like, from literally asking the question to some of our male classmates, like, they do not get that question. Um, it's very different. And I know for a fact, like, some residencies are longer than others. Like, some of them are like 7 years, and then it's like you graduate and you're like 35, 36. I think 36 is considered like a geriatric pregnancy. Like just a lot of things that go into that kind of play into, I guess, other things that we kind of, think about or don't think about. So I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on it, just like as a fellow student and hear your take on just like all of that commentary.
Sorry, I'm only laughing because I'm in a friend group where this is what we talk about at least
Yeah.
once. And so, and
Well, one
so
of them just got engaged.
yes, yes,
Like,
she did.
I guess
And
we're
I'm
all.
like, girl, you're beating us to the punch. But not,
You're like, give us a
but,
couple years. Come on.
but no, I definitely think it's something that comes up. I will be honest, it was something I thought about when I was even applying to medical school. Um,
Yeah.
specifically because I knew I'd taken 3 gap years, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna be on like the higher end, like when I or like the older end when I graduate and everything. Um,
Hmm.
and I just think I it's just it's so funny because to your point, like not everyone talks about it either. But
Hmm.
I think you also just get so many different perspectives on it, like depending on who you talk about. And I think because at the end of the day, it just kind of comes down to it, like inside of medicine or even outside of it, everybody is just like there is no right time to have a child, or like there is no right time to,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like they're just like you kind of just have to like let life. And
Hmm.
so what I will say though is I think like I said, talking to my friend group who we literally have in-depth discussions about this at least once a week, is that um I think so on one side, I will say I'm in a long-term relationship. And so on
Hmm.
that side, for us, I think that conversation just kind of looks more like us just being very realistic about what our expectations are and what that will actually look like for us. Um,
Hmm.
because on one hand, you have me who's like, well, I want to be pregnant on this day, have like be married by here, pregnant this time, have the kid.
That's me.
I can like have like I'm like and I feel like that person like I don't know I think like pursuing medicine I feel like all of us at some point in some way or form we're kind of very like this has to happen like this like or like it's
Yeah.
very um like A to B and you have my boyfriend who's very much so not like that and he's like okay but babe money like finances where
Real.
being like how are we like where's our support system like and in my head I'm like well what do you mean and so like
We'll
I
just
just
figure it out.
yeah like we'll just do it it's fine so I think just like for that conversation I think on like the one part that I was getting at is just also just like talking to like whoever you're having these conversations with and just making sure you're on the same page but
Yeah.
also being realistic with what that looks like for you because it's not going to look
Hmm.
the same for everybody right like it's like if you and your partner are in med school, that's a completely different conversation from like say one of you
Yeah.
and the other one has like a full-on career in like finance or something like whatever like those are two completely different conversations
Hmm.
and so I think just being realistic about it I think also how I was saying I looked at this before medical school is I will admit part of the reason I chose UF is because I'm close to family and so a big
Hmm.
thing he was like okay if I decide at some point, if I make the decision that while I'm in medical school, I want to get married and start a family and have all that happen,
Yeah.
I'm going to need support. Um, and I like, and the realistic side is that like that support more than likely is going to come from family. And I'm very grateful that I have family right here, like literally 20 minutes up the road from Gainesville. My grandma, my aunt live up there, and so, um, just I think with these conversations being real, just kind of like I think it's so important when you're choosing a medical school to literally look at every single variable. Like look
Yeah.
at everything that they offer. Like what does the parental leave policy look like at your school? What do your summers look like or your winter breaks? Are those times that you can get married? Are those times that you can, whatever you're looking to do. Um, and so yeah, I think part of that is just making sure that you have a good support system wherever you are, because I think that'll make a really big difference for what that looks like for you. And that's something that I've heard speaking to other residents, and like physicians in the field. It's just like having a good support system really makes a world of a difference. Especially if you cannot afford a babysitter, because those are expensive, or daycare.
Yeah.
So, things
Yeah.
but then I also think the other side of that, so like one, like, talking to your partner, two, seeing what your support system looks like, and then three, um, just being realistic, like you said, you meant being realistic about the timeline and kind of like what you're okay with doing and what you're not okay with
Yeah.
doing. So like you mentioned, some residencies are 7 years or whatever, right? And so it's like, well, if you could think about, starting a family in med or getting married in med school, but it's also like if you have 7 years of residency, are you gonna wait till after residency? And like if you do, shout out to you. Like that, like no, like and I mean that because like
Yeah.
that's like, 7 years of like
It's a long time.
staying focused and keep it moving forward. But then at the same time, maybe you decide that like at some point in that 7 years you could start a family. Like I think um you have to just be really comfortable about what you're willing to do. I will use
Hmm.
myself as an example. Like when I spoke to my boyfriend about it and like my CLG leader, but I was like, hey, depend what like is your like opinion on that or like what would you recommend? And she was just like, if you really want like a lot of time, like just a lot of free time to like get married or like start a family, like all those things. She was like, you probably should look into your fourth year when you basically have like the least amount of like
Yeah.
requirement, kind of, right? Because she was like, the reality is like when you start residency, at least like your intern year, you're not getting that. Like you're not gonna have that kind of time no matter like where you go. And so
Mhm.
um I think yeah, just looking at that and seeing what you're okay with, like, are you okay with what your time commitment might look like in residency and still making that decision, or do you want to do it in medical school and like, sometime somehow figure that out? Do you want to take an extra year, like take a year off and do that and then, graduate a year later? Because that's also an
Mhm.
option. Um, I just think there's a lot of variables that go into it. And I think overall, you kind of just have to talk to people and see what their experiences are. And then once you find out what you think might be best for you, find someone who's done that and then also talk to them and see what their experiences are as well.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the best way to go about the that conversation because it,
Something I feel like that's just like not talked about enough. Like, I guess within the medical school community, yes, people in the world, they like to talk about it, but they aren't like living it. So it's like a little bit different. And that was also a part of the catalyst of wanting to start a podcast like this is to like hear people's commentary on it. Obviously, like we are not married nor have kids and like have gone through that. So there's other than advice of like, which I loved what you said, being honest, like having that conversation like with your partner and talking to people, like loved that. But I can't wait to like hopefully have, physicians who, are either in residency, out of residency, or like medical students in our like school that have gotten pregnant, like that have a kid and like have taken that year off. I think I'm personally really excited to hear like what those experiences look like because it's just not talked about enough. And I feel like these are important things. And I feel like a lot of people who aren't experiencing this have a lot to say, but not people who are in it. And I just
yeah,
find that really interesting.
it's funny you say that too because I I mentioned my boyfriend. He don't know nothing about like medicine. How he's not he it goes over his head.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
but to your point, when I started having the conversation, it probably took until about the third time for him to like kind of realize he was like, wait, so you're saying, and I'm like, yeah, like, bro, like I don't have like this is 4 years of school and then like a whole bunch more work
Yeah,
after
babes,
that.
like
Like I promise I don't have the time that you think I have. Like it's just not. But to your point, like it really isn't something that's talked about outside of people in medicine. Like and I mean when I like the group of girls I'm talking about, like they're our classmates. Like that's who I talk
yeah,
to basis, but even um like my parents, my mom's in healthcare, so she's a bit different. She kind of like and she works with doctors all the time, so she is
she
aware of those
gets it.
conversations. Yeah,
Yeah.
but like my my pops and my dad, they like when I bring it up to them, they're still on like the wave of like my daughter's trying to like get married or like have a kid. Like they're not thinking like
Yeah.
well, having these conversations because I'm at a point where, like, with the career that
Yes.
I was in, like, they don't kind of like they're not thinking about it that way yet. And I really think it took probably until it's July, so probably like mid-spring semesters, like around like April, I would say like March
Mhm.
for them. I think like when it kind of like wrapped around their brains and they were like, yeah, you really don't have like like you really are pretty busy. You know, and I'm like, yeah, I know.
No, I completely relate to that because I remember like it very similar situation to you. Like my boyfriend is like not in healthcare at all. And like we've been together a while before even like going into med school. So it's like we do have these conversations ourselves and like those conversations go fine. But it's when I'm like talking to my parents about it, they're like, you're too young to get married. I'm like, oh, I know right now. Like right now, like not this year. But like if you think about it, fourth year, you're gonna have all this time off. I'm gonna be like 27, almost 28 at that point. That doesn't feel like too crazy young to me. I know I'll probably still feel young because,
Mhm.
I hope to always still feel young, have that youthfulness inside of me. But it's just funny because it's like you're like, what? Like you want to like be a mom and a wife? Like what are you talking? You have your whole life, and I'm like, oh no, guys, I'm aware. But you see, there are little itsy bitsy pieces of time that actually would work out really well if that like played into it.
Exactly. No, it's so funny. I definitely think like y'all starting this podcast is great because I also feel like social media itself has, I think, honestly brought it to like a little bit more.
Oh, for
Like I
sure.
saw one, two, I think two or three, um, like female physicians on my Instagram who are like had like one just had her fourth kid, and
Hmm.
like they talk about, what that looks like. And I mean, honestly, a lot of them are working up until like this one with her fourth, she worked up into basically her due date. Like she was on 24-hour call and was like, "Oh, well, gotta have my own baby," because she's an OB/GYN. It's funny. Um,
Wait, that's hilarious.
um, but I definitely think social media is a great so far has been like a great way of kind of bringing up the conversation a little bit more. And I think it's one of the better ways to get information or conversations like outside of the medical community, like if you're trying to do
Yeah.
that. And so I think that's helped a bit. I also say that because my boyfriend himself has been like, oh, yeah, like I saw this doctor on TikTok, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's the algorithm's doing its thing, like it's gonna get there sooner
Algorithms
or
doing
later.
its thing.
Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I definitely think social media's kind of helped a little bit with it. But to your point, I think medicine in general, like a lot of some of like the more specific topics, like even things that we've talked about, like if you're not in medicine for the most part, they're not really aware of what those conversations look like. Like, and I don't think it's to blame the people outside of it. I just think people like whatever their experiences are, like whatever they work in, whatever their community looks like that's kind of what their like focus is on and like what their worldview
Yeah.
is. So, um, bringing up these other conversations, like if anything, I think it just makes them have a bit, in my experience, at least with like my parents and my boyfriend, it makes them have a bit more, I think like just like respect for like the grind of becoming a physician, like what that really looks like, especially, um, being like being a female physician. I think they kind of respect it a bit more. They're like, oh no, like you have a lot of things that you like you're actually thinking about and like things that they wouldn't think twice about. And it's like I have to. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we do. That is for sure.
I also think it really comes back to what you said earlier about setting expectations and just like talking about it. Because I think that, marriage and having kids and stuff like that, a lot of people like there's a timeline and it looks exactly like black and white, like it's right now, and that, you get married right now, you have kids then. And I think that in medicine, like there's a timeline of becoming a doctor, and that's just like the way it is. Like med school's 4 years, residency's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And so having that talk of, like Yasmine, you said too, of when are good times to do this because, it might not fit always. But then at the same time, like life's got a life, like you
Yeah.
said, I like that Marquia a lot actually. So, we can't plan out everything and like that's okay too. Like I didn't plan to come to Florida for med school and it worked out that way, which has been awesome. But, I think also just being flexible in, how
Mm,
things could happen.
yeah,
Huge one.
also a really good point. Well, Marquia, you have been like literally the loveliest guest, and it's been so awesome. Like getting to talk to you about all this stuff. Like obviously, like we've talked like in passing and like, I've gotten like it's and bits and pieces like of your story through our own conversation, but it's just been awesome to just get to like give people the space to just like talk about all of it. And I feel like it just gives me more of appreciation for like you and other people we'll probably have on. But one last thing I just want to ask you is do you have any advice you'd like to leave our listeners who are, pre-meds, current med students, wanting to be on the same journey, might have the same fears and questions that like we all do.
A big thing that I think just keeps me going, I think being first off, pursuing medicine is a feat in itself. So if like you're pre-med or whatever, like you're thinking about doing that, like go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back because you're putting in the work, like you're working really hard and you deserve to like reward yourself for that. And so I think that's number one. But I do want to say like as you're going through that process, whether you're applying to like your pre-med applying to medical school when you get into medical school, which obviously that's where I am currently. I can't speak for what's after. But I think my COG leader said it one time. She looked at me and she was like, I think when you become a physician, you're going to take really good care of yourself. And I use that to say, I think no matter where you are in the journey, like what you're doing, just remember to literally take care of yourself. Don't forget about the hobbies that you enjoy doing. Remember the reason that you want to go into medicine and continue to pursue that because I said it earlier, that's what's going to fill your cup, and make all the stressful nights and the sleepless nights worth it. But then also, like literally just you kind of just have to remember to touch grass. Some people say,
Real.
like you physically go outside,
And I
move
know
around.
I do. I set a 10-minute alarm and I'm like, we're gonna go for a walk. If we
Yeah,
have a nice little trail, I'm like, we're gonna actually go touch some grass.
exactly. Like physically go touch some grass. Really do have to take care of yourself in this journey. There's a lot like I said, life will continue to life. You don't know what's going to happen. There's so many things
Mhm.
happening in the world. There's like so many external, internal factors to everything. And so I think at the end of the day, you just really have to remember to take care of yourself, like 100%, whatever that looks like, whether, like I said, it's a hobby, going outside, continuing to talk to people that you love and that you care about, but really just take care of yourself, I think is the biggest thing I would say.
So beautifully said.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely something that's the top of my goal list for our second year
Yes.
to do a better job of that. Life goes so
Mhm.
fast. It goes too fast, but
It
Yeah.
does. And it's hard. We were talking about last episode, just like recognizing the trying and like giving yourself a pat on the back for even attempting to like try something new like during medical school. And like even if it doesn't like pan out exactly the way you want, at least
Yeah.
you tried. I feel like that's better than just like giving up because you're like, well, this isn't gonna work, but like at least try it, you know? Never know.
Literally, just try to do something for yourself.
we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Mm.
It's an awesome episode, and I also have really like to learn more about you because I know you're our president, but every time I talk to you, I feel like I learn more about you, more about myself, more about being a better person. So thank you very much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I was so excited when Yasmin texted me. I was like, oh,
I
this is
was
so
like, you'd be the perfect person.
No, I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed talking to y'all, and I really appreciate y'all like holding space for me to yap because I was talking for a while. But then
Holding
also,
space. Oh, you would have the people that get it.
no, y'all are amazing, and y'all had really insightful questions, and I just appreciate y'all allowing me to give my opinion on them and talk to y'all. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we love you. And thank you, everyone. If you're still listening up to this point, we hope you enjoyed this talk with Marquia and got some insight and are able to kind of reflect and take some things were said and maybe apply it to your own lives. Yeah. And so we will see you guys in the next episode.